something we want to introduce into the regular cadence of our council is to highlight new technology, whether it's ID devices, reading systems, data collection systems, tracing programs and systems, and bring them to the committee to keep us all up to date on what's the latest technology and trends in our industry. For all NIAA member organizations, please reach out to Neville and I if you do have some new technology or something to share, because our intention is to try to do this on a regular basis. We do have our upcoming annual meeting, April 21 to 23. And the council meeting is on the 22nd. So we'll be focusing a lot on our NIAA business in that meeting. But in our off annual meeting sessions, we're going to try to bring this technology to you guys, and again, help our member organizations, come to this group, highlight what they're doing, give everybody a chance to ask questions and understand where the technology and the industry is going. So you guys all understand the resources that are out there to move ID systems forward. So today we're really pleased to be able to highlight Fort Supply Technologies, a longtime member of our council and of NIAA. Honestly, it's a group that doesn't need a lot of introduction. They are always there at the meetings and always very active in sharing what they're doing at the trade show events that we put on. Fort Supply Technologies is an industry leader in UHF technology and precision livestock management solutions that enable beef operations to meet consumer demand for safe and sustainable food, while improving overall customer productivity and profitability. Today's presenters will be Phil Lawler, the Vice President of Commercial Operations, and Nephi Harvey, Co-founder and Chief Technology Officer. They'll be telling us more about the dual tracker device. It's a dual LF and UHF reading system, which is their new patent pending dual frequency reading solution. Neville, I'll pass it on to you for any comments, and then we'll kind of queue up our friends from Fort Supply. Neville?
Great, Glenn, thank you. I just want to reiterate a couple of thoughts that Glenn mentioned. With COVID, we've probably learned a few things along the way, and this really is a great venue to allow us to meet regularly, and I think we want to try to keep doing that and keep this up and provide some cadence and stay up to date on what's going on in the industry. And so, through COVID, we're learning some things. And to that point, though, I also just want to mention that the chairs of the councils met this week with JJ, and just want to emphasize that we are open to any feedback, any suggestions you have, wherever we need to go. Again, just on this council, and I know I speak for all the council chairs, we want to make this good for you, and we certainly are welcome to try anything that we need to try to make this as effective as possible. So just one last point to that, just before we jumped on, JJ reported that we have 68 people registered for today's session, and so obviously we all have interest in keeping up in the industry, and so I hope that we can keep doing that. So with that, Phil, we'll turn it over to you and to Nephi, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank JJ and Glenn, Neville, and NIAA for facilitating this, and for NIAA playing that neutral role to keep us all informed of changes in the industry and changing technologies as a whole. We will. I'll start off the presentation, and then I'm going to kick it over to Nephi to wrap things up, and we'll provide ample time for Q&A. We can stick on as long as we need to, and answer any questions that you might have. So with that, anyone that has dealt with Fort Supply as a customer or as an industry partner, some of these screenshots that you see there probably look familiar. I want to give just a quick overview of Fort Supply for anyone that isn't familiar with the company that we have evolved into, and then we'll certainly spend the majority of our time talking about and presenting Dual Tracker, our dual frequency reading solution. When you look at Fort Supply, any of our solutions always involve these three components. There's always an electronic ID component to it. There's always a hands-free or autonomous data collection process involved. And then the outcome is that secure and flexible data management and reporting to help people make better decisions and create efficiencies in their operation, regardless of what type of an operation they have. And really we view it as just that connectivity, traceability, and we'll talk a little bit about that word, as well as profitability. You can see down the left-hand side, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but just to let everyone know our involvement in the industry, our solutions, we took the individual components and they're utilized across usually many solutions for many operation types. And you can see everything, from the tags on down to data integration. The solutions that we provide span the operations that are involved in the beef supply chain from top to bottom. Just to give a quick definition of what some of them are, and then we'll jump into Dual Tracker. Value Tracker, it's that ecosystem, if you will, that provides the EID tags, readers, devices, and software that we as a company guarantee will work together. That can be one of the frustrations for people in the field, so to speak, that are attempting to use the technologies if everything doesn't talk properly to each other. Health Tracker is a very cost-effective remote health monitoring solution, monitors the behavior of each individual animal to detect health or injury or sickness or injury 24 to 48 hours before a pen rider or a herdsman can recognize there might be something wrong with that animal. Asset Tracker, very similar, but it's more focused on tracking the fixed assets in that group to make sure that those that are supposed to be there are still there. There wasn't a hole in the fence that somebody backed up to and hauled some animals off, but it also monitors the individual animal movements in operations such as stockyards or backgrounders that are rotating pasture. Dual Tracker is what we're going to focus in on today, and we see that really as more of a solution for auctions, for feed yards, and for packers, and that'll become a little more clear as we go through this, and that'll be the bulk of our time spent now going forward here in the discussion. So I saw this quote from Michael Dell, and I really liked it when he talks about that, we're in the business of technology, but it's also about operations and it's about customer relationships. And for us, that means ease of use by the operations that are implementing our solutions. Dual Tracker is a case in point. Also, that customer relationships is really more about showing value to each customer along the supply chain that has a touch point with any of the solutions that are in place. So I thought it would be good to just review some of the market dynamics that are occurring now or that have been occurring, and how those contributed to leading us to this discussion today about how to accommodate these two technologies that are there in the marketplace. Traceability tends to be thought of primarily as animal disease traceability, but those of us involved in EIDs and in monitoring technology and software, we've seen that really what's driving the growth over the last few years is traceability from the perspective of consumers are demanding specific value-added traits. And COVID actually amplified that. As all of us are eating at home more, people, it's been talked about in the news that they're more concerned about what they're feeding themselves, what they're feeding their families. And that's certainly going to, we believe, drive increased ramped up adoption of EID technology. It's become a divided marketplace. because of several legacy programs utilizing LF, low frequency. But then there's just an increasing groundswell and interest from producers in particular to utilize the advantages of UHF. The advantages being that it can be used to the power and configuration of a system can be adjusted to read individual animals, or you can ramp it up and read animals on the go, read groups of animals, read animals moving through a wide space, and not disrupt the flow or have to confine them just to get an ID off of them. And then when you look at what kind of shift is creating these challenges, it is the producers wanting more options, but yet points of consolidation, and that's just a broad term that I'll use to define really any place where cattle are coming together in large numbers from multiple sources. And more often than not, that's auctions and feed yards and the packers. And those points of consolidation have they're not always equipped with both of these technologies. And that was one of the challenges that we set out to solve with our dual tracker solution. So you may have seen this graphic. It's on our website. It's been in, we've had some news releases. We had some big news that we announced last month about the company. And I will tell you the dual tracker link in that press release about our strategic investor, True Ranches, dual tracker received well over half of the click-throughs. So it does seem to be a timely topic. Let's walk through what dual tracker is kind of step by step. And this is I've got an animated graphic here, and bear with me if I have to pause it because it gets ahead of me, or I pause because I'm getting ahead of it. But one of the misconceptions about low frequency and UHF is that the technologies are incompatible. So it was thought that someone that had a low frequency reading station set up to get those low frequency reads would have to do something completely different to accommodate cattle coming through with UHF tags. And the reality behind that is no one wants two workflows and two EID outputs. Dual tracker, we were able to consolidate and write software that allowed the two technologies to reside in the same space. They are literally reading in the same physical field, and whatever cattle come through, those tags are being read, and you end up with one workflow, and then you end up with one EID output. So the consolidation on both of those challenges. Dual tracker truly is one workflow and one EID output. Going back to the components of a Fort Supply solution that we had talked about earlier, from an electronic ID perspective, dual tracker can read any commercial EID tags that are programmed to the ISO standards for low frequency or the 2016 USDA interim standards for UHF. That's not to say that some crazy tag being imported in by somebody that wasn't programmed properly is going to be read, but hopefully we're all going with established tags and not complicating an already possibly complicated situation. It is an autonomous reading solution, so it requires no human interaction. It requires no human decision making. That's a concern that different points of concentration have expressed to us, that they don't want their workers to have to eyeball that tag and decide, well, what type of tag is that, and now what do I do with those animals? The data coming out of that one output goes directly to the customer's legacy system, whether it be an internal system for a packer, a third-party system, accounting system, or animal management system at a feed yard, or into auction software at a stockyard. There's also lots of options there, not lots of options. There's the option of sending that data concurrently to the Fort Supply Cloud for online access or for sharing with other approved parties approved by that customer. It's the customer's data, and it's not going anywhere that they don't want it to go and anywhere that they don't know that it's going. it makes dual tracker really a true plug and play. It's easy to install and it's easy to use. And we'll talk a little more about that as we walk through some use cases later on in the presentation, compliments of Nephi. So just to highlight some of the high level attributes and benefits of a dual tracker system. It is a patent pending dual frequency reading technology that we think is very timely because the beef supply chain is facing this challenge of accommodating both of those technologies. So by being able to read both of them, it allows a POC to receive and manage cattle with either type of EID tag. It leaves the producer free to select the technology that they want to use, and it eliminates any need for enforcing any kind of an industry standard. From a hassle-free perspective, we have several situations that we can talk about that where the system is put in place typically in less than a half a day, particularly when it's installed in conjunction with a low frequency stationary reader that's already in place. It does still, you have to accommodate the lowest common denominator, in this case, the read range of a low frequency system to, so you're still gonna have to run cattle in a single file past the field where both antennas and readers are sending out the signal and reading the tags. So that is something that's important to know. We don't have any secret sauce for allowing cattle to run through a 10-foot wide alleyway and read a low frequency tag. The plug and play aspects of this allow animals to move more freely. Enhancing animal well-being is certainly one of the cornerstones of procurement policies by bigger purchasers in the industry. It's something that consumers are acutely aware of wanting to the industry, us in the industry, to accommodate. By not having to restrain animals or rework them several times to get that tag read, you're going to again enhance that animal well-being. By not having to get up close and personal with a raging animal, read the tags as they pass by, it increases the safety element of the environment that the workers are in. And probably the most important is it mitigates human error in trying to get a unique ID on each of those animals that are being processed in whatever manner at that facility. So these other points, we are really reiterating some of the points that I had already made, that one workflow, the single output, and by the data flexibility, where the output goes was discussed. I discussed that in a previous slide as well. I do want to elaborate on one, it'd be the second bullet point down there under the secure, flexible data flow. We are able to accommodate that permission-based data sharing to other supply partners or to blockchain ledgers as participation in those systems becomes more commonplace in the industry. I will point out the last bullet there, that online access. People that have the dual frequency, the dual tracker system in place already love the fact that they don't have to step out of their office to go out to the scale or to go out to wherever the data box is to get the data, that it can just drop right onto their phone, onto their tablet, or onto the PC that's sitting in front of them on the desk. You can see some of the situations that that dual tracker is installed in now, and not to we don't need to go into those here on this slide because Nephi is going to cover those in much greater detail as we proceed here. We think that it is important to point out, when you look at, we get the question very commonly, who needs a dual tracker system? Who needs that dual frequency EID capability? A general rule of thumb would be that if an operation is not already seeing low frequency tags on a regular basis, and therefore has not felt the need to make the investment to install a stationary low frequency reader, then there's probably not an eminent need for them to have a dual tracker solution put in place in conjunction with the LF equipment. We feel that attempts to address this challenge of accommodating both technologies across the entire supply chain, it would conservatively, in our estimates, cost the industry about $35+ million. If you start adding $1 or more per animal that's running through our U.S. supply chain, by focusing on those points of the points of consolidation, implementing dual tracker systems in strategic locations where they are or expect to commonly see both of the technologies coming through as that unique animal ID, those are the places that a dual tracker system should be considered. By focusing the industry spend there, it's going to be less than 5% of the spend of trying to address every step along the supply chain. So Nephi, I'll let you talk through some of these, and when you want to, we're going to walk through some of the use cases for dual tracker, some very specific use cases, and I'm going to let Nephi talk through these slides, as well as he's going to show you some live data.
Sounds great. Thank you, Phil. I'm going to share my screen instead here. And come up to a couple of pictures that I've prepared here. So first case I want to talk about is a packing plant. This is a packing plant in the Midwest that was the UHF portion, and the dual tracker portion was installed in September in conjunction with a state and some federal funding that came through the state as well. So the low frequency panel here on the right was already installed. It was in place and up and operational, and they were receiving, they being the state and the packing plant, receiving the low frequency tag data on that prior to our arrival with installing the dual track. We installed the antenna for the low frequency, ran it back, and ran both systems into one box, just as an example here, into this box. And this box then communicated out the data to the state and to the packing plant without any interaction at all with the packing plant. We didn't have to involve their IT department. We just plugged this box in, plugged it into their old output that was receiving only this low frequency tag, and now they're receiving all tags, low frequency and high frequency. Additionally, per our contract, the state is receiving all tags on an email every midnight that is set up so that they can monitor the tags that are coming through the system. One of the interesting problems that the state was looking at to interpret from this is they didn't know if UHF tags were even coming through the plant before this. So through that data, we were able to very immediately, the very first day, see some of the UH tags come through. And what I'm showing you here is a small screenshot of just the past week to 10 days worth of data. You can see today alone, they've had 738 tags go through and 0 UHF. Yesterday, it was 925 and 6, et cetera, as you go down here with the totals. And this report, in addition to the nightly email dump that goes to the state has the option of logging in and looking at this data as well. If I click on one of these view buttons here for this, it opens up another tab, and that tab contains the actual EIDs of all the animals that went through either UHF or low frequency. In this case, antenna 1 represents the UHF tags, and there's some 840 tags, there's some 900 series tags, and scrolling down through, you can see that there's 840 tags, and when I was looking earlier, there were some 982 tags as well down here. Let's see, I've ranked them, so probably down at the very end. Maybe it was one of the other dates. Oh, there's a 982 there and a 982 there. So this is reading all the tags, and again, the key takeaway is on this, that as the animals through the packing plant past these two readers, doesn't matter which tag they have, all of that data is consolidated through one system and passed on to the state, and the packing plant as one data stream, so that the IT departments didn't have to go through massive rewrites or even minor rewrites of what they're doing to collect data from the system itself. Briefly moving along to another installation very similar to this. This one was in state of Nebraska. This was at a auction yard in Nebraska, and what we did there is the auction yard built this single file alleyway. You can see it's fed from a tub that's on the right. They installed a all-flex antenna here. We installed our antenna on top, and then over in the barn, all the data comes through our box, and our box in this particular case is passing data to 2 points. It's passing data to U.S. cattle trace through an agreement, and it's passing data to into the auction yard, which is using that data for use on their program cattle through various program sources that they have. So they download this data through an interface, just like I showed you here. They would click CSV or Excel on the data dump and upload that straight as an Excel spreadsheet into their value-added program supplier of choice that they're using. So in these cases, as Phil had mentioned, the lowest common denominator is the low frequency, and so all the animals have to pass through so the low frequency reader can read it. But as if they have a mixed set of cattle and they have some cattle with low frequency and high frequency, they don't need to sort them in order to read them. They can just pass them all through this portal, or through the portal at the packing plant, wherever they might be, and it reads all animals with either tag type in the air and reports them as a consolidated report, or for a login on a consolidated website, or passing it on to Cattle Trace or a state agency, or any of the other places you might want to look at the data, or directly through serial into an existing system at a packing plant or a feeder. And that makes it easy so that people don't have to rewrite and rethink their way of managing the data. It's available in a variety of ways to them. Are there any questions?
If I have some of the screenshots of the dual system set up on a chute, would you want me to share my screen and show those?
Yeah, please do.
All right.
While they're doing that, Nephi and Phil, when you're ready to go into the Q&A session, let Neville and I know.
Okay.
A reminder to everybody, JJ put out a little message. If you have a question, please just go and click on the chat button and either say I have a question or spell out your question, and we'll make sure we get to it. So thanks, guys. Go ahead.
Glenn, can you see my screen again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so these were some of the shots that Nephi had just shown. Another type of installation is where they want to physically read a head that's sticking out of the chute, and this is a compilation of photos with taken at different. These two were taken at different times in the installation. You can see in a chute. Whoops, sorry about that. That was user error on my part. We typically will either, if it's inside, we'll install that UHF reader up on the ceiling, up and out of the way, and you can see that up next to the light on the ceiling there in that picture on the left. And it's worth mentioning that this tag that's sitting there on that table, that's where they obviously lay out all their equipment and grab what they need to grab. That tag presently is not being picked up by that antenna because of the positioning of the antenna and the power has been reduced to it. One of the nice aspects of our data box being online is that we can actually do tech service online. it's not at all uncommon for us to do an installation, and Nephi will err on the side of less power in a chute situation like this. And when they test it when live and animals are coming in, occasionally we'll get a customer that'll say, hey, dial the power up, dial the power back a little bit. And he can do that, or our tech team can do that remotely, which is nice. Lets them process cattle instead of being tech support, right? And the two options that we've seen, and those of you that provide low frequency equipment may have other suggestions, but this is the same chute in the upper right and on the left. Left picture was taken before the bar readers were installed on the head catch, and then down in the lower right it's just a different type of LF antenna that we have seen and done installations with. To that it's up to the user to decide what low frequency antennas they want to use. We really don't have an opinion one way or the other. And so that was the last of the information that we had to present, Glenn and Neville, and we can open it up for questions. I would ask that we it would be reasonable for questions to come up about what the USDA is going to do, or what the USDA's opinion is, and quite honestly, none of us really know until they share it with us. And it'd probably be out of a sense of time efficiency. We probably would be best off not getting bogged down trying to discuss benefits and disadvantages of the two technologies, and just accept they're both out there in the marketplace. And our intention with Dual Tracker is to accommodate the use of both in these points of consolidation.
Phil, if you could back up one slide, I'd like to make one more quick comment that might solicit some questions, or maybe even answer some questions in advance. One of the common questions that I receive is, it'll go something like, we've heard that UHF and low frequency don't play well together. If you turn on a low frequency reader and a high frequency reader, the ultra high frequency interferes with the low frequency. That was in fact the case the very first one we did over a year ago. We have found a way to overcome that. We've implemented that within our box so that the feedback through the electrical system does not interfere, even if they're plugged into the same plug now. So the fact is, at this point, with the technology as it stands, ultra high frequency being installed, like the pictures you're seeing on the screen here, does not impair the low frequency readers from reading at their maximum distance when they're installed. In the picture on the left, in the upper right, that the low frequency readers were installed, the most complicated part that they had installing those was that the lights that you see in that upper one were interfering with it. And the solution was to pull a 100-foot extension cord through to pull the power off so that the lights weren't interfering with the low frequency. But the ultra high frequency is immune, as far as we've seen in every installation we've ever done. It's immune from the outside interference of pumps and motors and lights and everything else. It just doesn't interfere with it. And again, just repeating myself here, importantly, the ultra high frequency does not interfere with the low frequency with the electronic solution we've implemented within our dual track system.
And I jumped back a couple of slides because this might preemptively answer some questions as well. The Fort Supply data boxes, whether it's for dual tracker, health tracker, or asset tracker, have a variety of connectivity options as well. We can connect right there on site via serial or Ethernet. We can connect. We can put a SIM card in there and connect via cellular signal, and we can also set it up to communicate via the operations Wi-Fi. So there's not a one size fits all here. The data box is configured for that operation specifically. In fact, typically at a point of consolidation, whether it be an auction, a feed yard, or a packer, there's going to be AC current there, but we do have other systems that are set up to run off of a tractor battery or truck battery as well. So there's different power options as well.
or solar panel for that
Or
matter.
solar panel, correct, yep.
Thank you. So I'm seeing some questions pop up. If you don't mind, I'll just dive into those. Is there a particular format you'd
great.
like to go in, Glenn?
That'd be great. I mean, I
Yeah.
was just gonna cue them up in the way they came in. Stacy's came in first, so if you can see that, why don't you go ahead and just
Okay,
jump
you
on.
mentioned the idea that no one can use this in the lowest stockyard with 10-foot alleys. So the question is, with dual track in place, essentially what's the widest alleyway that would be practical for it? That would go back to that picture that I showed you. Because of the low frequency expectations of distance being shorter range, if you're going to have dual track running, you would need to run an alley that can fit one animal through it at a time, as was shown in that picture that I showed you. The ultra high frequency, if you were doing it all dedicated, such in a stockyard or a packer, a feeder, or a sale barn, we've got that set up where they're dedicated in 10-foot alleys, 12-foot alleys, even one that's an 18-foot alley at a yard in Kansas. So if you're dedicating the technology to utilize the UHF, then yes, you get away with the larger alleyways. But as long as we're doing the low frequency, setting it up so that they are going through one at a time is still necessary if you want to gain the tag information from each animal that has a low frequency tag in the ear. You can do tricks like we've seen where you have multiple single wide alleys. There was a presentation several months ago with doing that with the low frequency tags with multiple single wide alleys. In that case, you just add another antenna over the top of every low frequency alley, and we can still pump all of that through our box so that the data stream is consolidated going out of the box. I'll just keep moving through the questions, and then if we don't answer one adequately, I think we can come back to it if that's all right. So I'm guessing that's Dr. Keller. 2 readers and data going into one collection system. Yes, it's two readers, or in this case 2 antenna, and both antennas funnel into one box. That would be the force supply box, and that one box pushes out one output, or 2 outputs, or 3. We can go to different sources, but the bottom line is, in the way that we've designed this, is so that you can drop in that one box. And if you already have low frequency in place, for instance, you can drop in our dual track box in there with our antenna and not have to disrupt the IT that everybody's already set up for, that's been reading from the low frequency box only all this time. It's a single consolidated standardized output for both tags coming out of our one box. Another question. Yes, please.
Does the system require a full antenna and reader on the LF side to be in place to integrate, or can you use just an antenna, and that the reader that's either incorporated or provided as part of the LF system is basically disabled when you hook it up to your system?
It requires a antenna and a decoder from the low frequency reader. So that antenna decoder from an Allflex or from a Datamars system.
Miranda, line 1, please. Miranda, line 1.
Would be pushing that data into our box. So it's the entire system. Phil, back up one slide if you would, please. Go back one more slide. So for instance, on this left-hand slide where the gray antenna is, that's an antenna, in this case from Allflex, and the little square box on it is the decoder that knows what to do with that data from the antenna. Both of those are necessary. And in fact, for the low frequency system, it requires a pair of these. So there's one on either side of the chute in order to make sure that they grab every tag that goes through the low frequency side of the system. Those boxes plus our antenna go over, clear over on the left-hand side under the barn there into our box, where we take the stream and marry it together and push out which antenna it came from, what tag type it is, etc. We marry that stream together. And if somebody's already connected to, which we find frequently, this was certainly the case in that packing plant, they had a serial data cable going into the existing low frequency box. And we just took that off, put ours in between, and tapped the low frequency into our box to make one solid data stream. And again, the key point there, I was there for a few hours on a maintenance day, and we didn't even have to involve IT. We just literally took one off, plugged in the other, and all of a sudden they were seeing all low frequency and high frequency data coming to them in an uninterrupted manner.
One more quick question, because to me, this, if I'm understanding it right, it's a really nice feature here. The low frequency setup and the UHF frequency, ultra high frequency, both are running concurrently at their optimal. And I'm asking it to kind of contrast with the low frequency. Once upon a time was a compromise between half duplex and full duplex. And so a low frequency reader technically shifts between reading half duplex and full duplex. And so it really doesn't optimize either technology. Sounds like by the fact that you've got both running concurrently, you're getting the optimal LF read and the optimum UHF read. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. That's exactly correct. They're both running absolutely concurrent. We're not turning power on one and off on another to make it work. The way we've reduced the interferences electronically elsewhere. So, and by reduce, eliminated the interference so that the ultra high frequency electronics, equipment, power does not interfere with the more susceptible low frequency electronics and power. They're running absolutely concurrent with each other. You could run 10 low frequency and 10 high frequency animals through this, and they will read equally well to their relative antenna that they're being read by.
And Nephi, on that point,
every other animal, in fact, you could have an animal with both tags in their ears, and it would make absolutely no difference to the read rate relative to the technology.
Really well done. Let me just kind of cue it. I think you're on Andrew's question at this point.
Okay, so maybe if you could read those and keep me up to speed on which one we're at, because I've lost track.
You mentioned that in the harvesting facility, the state was receiving reads through a nightly email. Are the harvesting facilities utilizing this for data management as well?
Yes. In fact, that harvesting facility, when we went into it, we were not made aware that they had tied into the data stream prior. And so when I arrived to hook in, I saw, shall I say, kind of a kludge data serial that was falling apart and maybe not working. And I was able to fix that. The bottom line was, at the end of the day, we tapped in and we were providing a reliable data stream to both the harvesting facility and to the state through the email, and number three, through that interface, that web-based interface that I was showing you as well. So somebody could go backwards and look in time in addition to the email that was being sent out at midnight with the summary of the tags that went through it.
Peter asks, what happens if an animal has both tags, low frequency in one ear and high frequency in the other ear? Does it count, or does it pick them both up?
Yes, the answer is yes. It will pick that up, and technically speaking, it would report that as two different animals because the tags are different IDs on both ears. So if we ever got to a state where the same EID number was on both tags, the software would then be able to decipher and say, okay, these are two different animals, or this is the same animal because it's the same ID, and so only report one instance of that. But right now, there's no correlation on putting there's no standardized correlation method, is what I should say, between putting a UHF tag into an animal with a low frequency tag as well. So both tags would be reported.
And so if you were sequencing, is there a way to basically know that the 12th and 13th read are the 12th animal, and then the 14th read becomes the 13th animal? I'm not sure if I'm expressing that well.
Yeah, we've looked at doing that. The problem is nobody in our current customer base is keeping track of who the 12th and 13th was beyond the tags that are going through. So there's really not a lot of there hasn't been a lot of desire to put any AI into that to determine and correlate that with the actual order that they went through, because the order that they went through is essentially the way the tags were reported. In our own systems for customers of ours that might be running both tags or more than that, UHF tags, low frequency tags, visual tags, previous tags that have fallen out, we can in fact correlate that when the data is already within our system. So you read a low frequency tag and it says, oh, I don't care about the ultra high frequency, or vice versa, because we know that's one animal. But that's because we've already maintained a database on those animals. You go into an auction area like this, where they're more or less coming from random locations. There's no guarantee that we as a private company would have that database of the correlation between those tags. And so we don't even offer that at this point, because we have no guarantee of knowing who that, what that might have been.
And on the dual, on the situation there where the animal might have both tag types in them, keep in mind the use case more often than not now is that group of cattle is tagged and they're looking for a specific type of tag as the valid ID for that group. And so if they're looking for, if these are programmed cattle, and the first load they're trying to read LF tags, the UHF tags can be weeded out of the data very easily. If they're looking for UHF tags, the LF data can be weeded out. It's more often than not, they're looking to validate that the animals that they were looking for are in that group or are not in that group. So picking up both tags would be just a kind of a non-event.
So another question I see here is again, Dr. Keller, how much does it cost? I think that's what she's getting to. So in the one that you're looking at here, this is an excellent example because everything went in for scratch. The hardware for this, the low frequency panels that went in here cost about $6,000. The ultra high frequency were about $5,000. So total setup that you're looking for this alleyway right here was right around the $11,000 mark, with the low frequency being at 6 and the ultra high frequency being at 5. When we worked with Nebraska on this one for this auction yard, Nebraska contracted the low frequency portion to be installed by directly by the vendor, and the ultra high frequency we installed, and then we tied the two together as one final package. And part of that was to save on cost, because if we run all the hardware through us, ultimately we have to mark it up for profit. And so it just made sense to save a little money by having them install the low frequency and us install the ultra high frequency portion, and then us marry the two together. Then of course, if depending on what data flow options, there might be a subscription fee for the website that we customize the pricing for, depending on how often and what kind of data they're running. But that's the only ongoing fee that's related to this, is if there's a web-based interface that is being accessed over time.
Nephi, there's a question that someone is asking: do you still have to tune the high frequency antenna to the high frequency tag? Previously, there were different 8 high frequency tags with frequencies that were far enough apart that required tuning for the tags. Key is to have high frequency reader tuned to the high frequency tag used. And I'll take a first crack at that. You correct. He's the tech guy, but I'll correct me if I've misspoke on this. That's really why it's important that people use tags that are programmed to the USDA 2016 interim standards for UHF. If the tags are programmed properly to what is supposed to be the US standard, then the programming of the reader doesn't have to be tweaked. And particularly for someone that's a point of consolidation and they're bringing cattle in from all these from a variety of different sources, I'd highly recommend that they insist on tags that are programmed to the USDA standards so that they don't have to keep tweaking the programming of the reader. The more common scenario of that occurring is going to be, somebody going on the internet and buying whatever tags they can find. There's a lot of programming options, and that's why the USDA had set forth interim standards in lieu of ISO not addressing it.
Exactly. If somebody goes online and looks up UHF cattle tags and finds one of the 30 or 40 companies in China that are selling them, they will be tuned correctly to use the terminology, but they won't be programmed correctly. And the programming is where we've had customers do this. Oh, I can buy that tag for 50 cents from China, and they get that tag from China, and it's got a variety of problems, not the least of which is that standardized hardware doesn't read the tag simply because it's not programmed to the standard. So my recommendation is people stay away from that and go to one of the 2 or 3 suppliers of tags that are currently on the market and frankly demand that more suppliers keep supplying more selection of UHF tags, and also stressing the importance of reasonable systems to even promote 840 qualification within the USDA. And that way we have a standard in place, and people aren't frustrated with the technology because it was just the cheapest thing you could find out of China.
Nephi, we have a cattle versus sheep and goat question here. Say in a livestock market, could the same setup, it jumped on me, could the same setup read either low frequency or high frequency on cattle and also read it on sheep and goats? Would it have to be set up differently?
The only difference would be is making sure that the low frequency panels were set up, positioned in proper read range for the sheep and goats when they went through an alley, similar to the one above. If cattle can walk through that and sheep and goats can walk it through that in a way that it reads the tags, then there's no difference in the setup. The low frequency tags for sheep and goats are the same 11784 ISO standard and 11785 ISO standard as they are for cattle. And the UHF tags that both we're looking at supplying for sheep and goats and the cattle tags are both programmed to the USDA standards. So there's no difference technologically. Again, the barrier comes as to what crowding through an alleyway does on sheep and goats versus cattle on an alley similar to the ones up in the pictures above for low frequency side of things.
Bill and Nephi, we skipped over one question from Todd. He was asking, for this dual read system, appears that a single file alley is required to marry this data together.
Yes, that's correct. For low frequency, you have the choice of either putting them in an alley this way, or Phil, skip to the next picture again. Or if you're processing at a chute, putting on the neck bars at the chute. And the third way that it could be utilized in a chute type situation like this is with the hand reader from a suspension cord above the chute that would be tied into our system as well for a dual frequency. All 3 of those are necessary simply because of the short range restrictions of low frequency. One thing this is not a magic way to make low frequency tags read longer than what they can read. We're not advertising that. It doesn't make low frequency tags read better than they already read. What it does do is it allows for low frequency tags that are in the marketplace to go through in mixed cattle sets or a mixed environment that might have both of them and be read without having to sort the cattle and without having to treat the cattle differently just to be able to read the high frequency. You have to read the tags to the lowest common denominator, which in this case is the low frequency tag.
And I think the next question is from Stacy. The web interface you showed for Fort Supply, does the data collected automatically upload on a set interval to that interface? And can users use that interface to set other places the files may be sent? And finally, is this the interface you mentioned? Would there be an additional monthly charge for accessing?
Yes. So last question first. Yes, this is the monthly charge interface for this type of data. To answer your first part of your question, behind this, for that packing plant, for instance, behind this, underneath, there's an automated system that is automated sending a spreadsheet that essentially has the date and time of each read, the tag read, and the type of read off to the state of choice here automatically every single night. No person ever has to touch that data, and then it's going in and uploading into their system in the background in an automated fashion through that email. With other customers, we've set that up as MySQL replication. We could do that as a JSON dump for those that know what JSON does or is, or an XML dump, or we can just simply send, as again at the same packing plant where this data is, we're sending as the tag is read, it is going over a serial line interface. I'll just switch over here to, you'll just have to have my pointer go here. It's going into our system, and then it's going out this blue wire and into this, and goes into this orange wire, and this is all of their plant. I didn't set up all their IT, but it eventually ends up in this box, and this box puts it on an Ethernet line, and that box transfers it up to IT. And so it's however we need to push that data for the customer, and it's that blue wire to orange wire, which was all part of their existing system, into this box that already existed in that case. Go ahead.
I was just going to say on that note as well, keep in mind that the configuration of the equipment that's in that data box, whether it is accommodating strictly UHF or if it's accommodating both low frequency and UHF, the output and how we're able to send that output is all the same. And we have systems that are currently set up to where the feed goes directly in this case that I'm going to speak of. It's an auction. It goes directly into the auction software. It goes to our cloud, and they're accessing it on our web-based system as needed. And I think I saw Callahan on there as a participant, so I'm just using him as an example. But this goes to the dump goes every night then to U.S. Cattle Trace as well. And I'm just using them as an example of a third party. It could go to a program verification partner. It could go to a blockchain ledger. We can route that data wherever the customer wants us to route it, in addition to their systems and online access through ours.
Yeah. Clarify just briefly, this particular customer is not going to Cattle Trace. It could if there was an agreement in place. But we have other customers that do.
Yep.
Real quick follow-up question. Does this accommodate doing a regular, like a nightly FTP interface with systems that still use FTP connections?
Yes, and in fact, that's how we interface with Cattle Trace, with the data that does go to them, is through a nightly FTP.
There's a question there from Mike M asking if Fort Supply manufactures or sells UHF tags. Yes, we do. We are the U.S. supplier for the 840, the 840 approved UHF tag, and then we have other UHF tag options as well.
I've been doing my best to track it. I think you guys have nailed all the questions, so I'll open it up. People, feel free to open your mic if you've got a follow-up question or a new question that you weren't able to type in. So any follow-up or any new questions for the group?
Glenn, this is JJ, and forgive me if I missed the answer, but I think Spencer had a question around, does this have application in the hog or pork production sector? Did we cover that?
Yes, it does. As a matter of fact, we're in discussions with somebody that's not, we don't play in that space, let's say, but we are open to working with companies that do, and we're already in discussions with somebody that's heavily involved with electronic or with EID managed data in the hog industry.
And on hogs, it would be the exact same hardware. It would be a slightly different and smaller tag, obviously, for the hogs, much like sheep and goats would be a smaller tag. But the hardware, software, data flow, all of that's identical. And it could also talk with the low frequency options that are in that space as well.
And in the hog industry, because the EID tags are not being discussed as a ADT option, at least at this time, it's not uncommon to see UHF tags that are programmed to the GS1 standards that are used in Europe. And if we know that going in to an installation, we can decipher the code. We can decipher the hexadecimal code out of that tag and deliver it in either in the raw format or there's flexibility on how the data is delivered for a hog installation.
All right, with that, Phil and Nephi, I'll leave you to any wrap-up comments or final words you'd like to express to the group.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and wrap up. Nephi, supplement, what I say with anything that you'd like to extend to the group. But we really do appreciate everybody taking the time to jump on this webinar and learn more about the dual tracker system. We're very proud of it. And we think it's a very timely solution for the U.S. beef industry as well as other species. And we are a smaller company than some, and don't have a unlimited wealth of resources, but we are always interested in talking with parties that are interested in a utilization of the technology that maybe we didn't talk about here or in other species. Or I would even say internationally. And you can reach out to us through the Fort Supply website. It's fort-supply.com. I'll actually give my email and Malcolm's, or excuse me, and Nephi's email addresses if you want to reach out directly to us. Mine is simply Lawler, Plawler at fort-supply.com, and Nephi's is Nephi, Nephi at fort-supply.com. Nephi, would you like to supplement anything to that?
No, that sounds great. Thank you very much for your time, and we would very much enjoy working and helping the industry out in any way with these technology solutions we've developed. We've been working hard to provide good solutions. We've worked with many of you in the past and look forward to continue to work with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and Glenn and Neville, thanks for chairing this meeting as well as just the council in general.
I appreciate what you guys have done for the industry and for the great presentation you did today. I think everybody got a lot out of it. I will just kind of spill the beans on myself. For those of you that are trying to communicate with them, spell out Fort. It's not FT-supply, it's FORT-supply.
Right.
I had a time and place where I never seemed to get messages to Nephi. It's because I always assumed it was FT, not FORT. So
yeah, JJ actually put that down in the chat.
Oh, sure did. Beat me to it as always. Good job, JJ.
Thank you, JJ.
Neville, would you like to have some closing comments for the group?
Well, this is just really encouraging, and from an NIAA standpoint, we've had 60 people participate, and they've hung right in there, and lots of great questions, and it's clear that this council is meeting the needs of the industry, and we just need to keep this up. And again, I'll just reiterate, any suggestions or comments you have, please let Glenn or myself know, and we'll be sure to respond. Great day.
Absolutely. JJ, you get to wrap us up.
Well, again, just to reiterate, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you to Phil and Nephi for reaching out and giving NIAA this opportunity to host this conversation. And thank you to Neville and Glenn for chairing the for co-chairing the council, and to all of our council co-chairs. As they mentioned, we do have our annual conference coming up. Be watching your email for not only information about annual conference, but also on March 18th, the Antibiotic Council will be convening a session virtually, where we will hear from several researchers that collaborated with the Food and Drug Administration on a multi-species use study. So we know there's a lot of interest in antimicrobial resistance and antimicrobial stewardship and what that looks like in different species sectors. So again, like we always do, bringing the depth and breadth of animal agriculture together to explore how we can better learn together and collaborate, etc. So with that, thank you, everyone. You will be receiving a recording of today's session. And if we can ever help you out at the National Institute for Animal Agriculture, please feel free to reach out, and we will either get you the answer or find someone who knows the answer. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, JJ. Take care, y'all.